The metal of the handcuffs was so cold it felt hot against my skin, and for a second I honestly thought this had to be some kind of prank, some messed-up social experiment. I was standing in the narrow galley of a packed airplane, wrists locked behind my back, with a cop in a neon vest breathing down my neck, and about 50 strangers holding up their phones like they were front row at a concert. All that because I sat in a seat I paid for. That's it. Not yelling, not fighting, not drunk, just sitting. You know what I mean? The officer leaned close and said, "You picked the wrong day to fake first-class sweetheart." And right there in that tiny metal hallway at 35A, it hit me. It wasn't just about a seat. It was about who they decided I was the second they laid eyes on me. My name is Lena Carter. I'm 20. I dress like every other college kid in oversized hoodies and beat-up sneakers, and that day on Flight 714 from LA to Barcelona, a whole lot of people made the same snap judgment. No way she belongs here. The flight started normal enough. It was one of those big international jets with the fancy lie-flat pods up front. The kind of thing you see in travel vlogs and think, must be nice. I wasn't dressed for it, that's for sure. I had on my old navy hoodie with the college logo cracked and faded black joggers and Air Force Ones that had seen better days. My hair was twisted up in a messy bun that was maybe 60% intentional and 40% chaos. I had my backpack, my noise-canceling headphones, and a paperback I'd been dragging around for months. The Art of War. Just to feel productive, even though I mostly used it as a travel pillow. I scanned my boarding pass, turned left at the door like I'd done this 1,000 times, and found my seat. 2A, window pod, first class. I'll be real with you. I was hyped on the inside, but trying to play it cool. You know that fake casual you put on like, yeah, this is normal, I totally drink sparkling water in glasses with stems. I sat down, tucked my book into the little storage cubby, kicked off my shoes, and pulled the door to my pod halfway closed, just enough to feel like I had my own tiny spaceship. For about 3 minutes, it actually felt like the kind of calm people write quotes about on Instagram. Then she showed up. Her perfume hit me before her voice did, sharp and expensive. Then came the tap on the plastic shell of my pod, aggressive like I was a bug on a window. "Excuse me," this voice says, tight and offended. "I think you're confused." At first I thought she was talking to someone behind me. I slid my headphones down and looked up, and there she was. Perfectly ironed cream blazer. Pearls, big diamond ring, that stiff salon blonde bob that doesn't move when she turns her head. She looked like she lived at charity galas and golf clubs. She looked at me like I had climbed in through the landing gear. "Can I help you?" I asked. Calm, polite. Because that's how my mom raised me. She gave this little laugh, the kind people use right before they insult you. "Yes, you can help by grabbing your things and heading back to coach where your actual seat is. This is 2A, my seat." I blinked, pulled my phone out, double-checked my boarding pass, and honestly thought, cool, simple mistake, we can fix this. "My pass says 2A. I told her, holding up the screen. "Maybe your seat is 3A or 4A. Her smile died instantly. "Oh, that's cute," she snapped. "Did you print that off some website? There is no way you paid for that seat?" Her voice got louder on purpose. "I've flown this route twice a month for 10 years. I always sit in 2A. People started looking. The guy in 2B lowered his newspaper. A businessman across the aisle took off his glasses. Now, it wasn't just a simple seat mix-up, it was a show. The flight attendant came over, a woman in her 30s with perfect lipstick and that customer service smile that looks like it hurts. "Ms. Wallace," she said to the older woman like they were old friends. "Is there a problem?" "The problem," Ms. Wallace jabbed a finger toward me, "is that this girl is in my seat and she refuses to move." The attendant glanced at my hoodie, my messy hair, my backpack tossed by my feet, then at Ms. Wallace's pearls and blazer. You could almost see the calculation happening in her head. She turned to me. "Ma'am, can I see your boarding pass?" I handed her my phone. She scanned it with her little handheld device. It beeped green. Everything checked out. For a second, I felt this wave of relief. Then Ms. Wallace said loud and sharp, "It's fake, or stolen. Look at her. Does she look like she belongs in first class?" The words hit harder than the volume. She didn't say, "Does she look like she can afford it?" She said, "Does she look like she belongs?" Skin color, hoodie age, all loaded into that one word. The attendant's eyes flickered, then she leaned closer and lowered her voice like she was doing me a kindness. "So there seems to be a double booking. We do have a seat for you in premium economy extra legroom, and we can process a partial refund after the flight." I cut her off, still trying to stay steady. "I didn't book premium economy. I booked 2A. I'm already seated. If there's a double booking, you move the passenger who's not boarded yet, or you ask for volunteers. That's your policy, right?" She stiffened. Ms. Wallace scoffed loud enough for half the cabin to hear. "Don't quote policy at her, sweetheart. You're delaying everyone's flight. Stop being difficult and go to your real place." My real place. I repeated more to myself than to her. That phrase stuck to my ribs. The attendant pressed her lips together, hit the call button, and said, "If you refuse to follow crew instructions, it becomes a security issue and we may need to involve airport police." My heart started pounding. I could feel people watching phones tilted just enough to record without being obvious. I could also feel the heat rising in my face, that mix of humiliation and anger that makes your hands shake. I pulled out my phone, opened my contacts, stared at one name for a long second. Dad. My father, who owns half the cargo in the sky and spends more time in boardrooms than in our kitchen. I didn't want to be that kid, the one who calls Daddy to fix their problems. So I put the phone face down on my knee and told myself no, they can still do the right thing. They didn't. A few minutes later, the plane door was still open. The engines were quiet and 2 uniformed airport officers stepped onto the plane. One of them, a big guy with tired eyes and a jaw made of concrete, took one look at the scene. Older white woman standing first-class seat, black girl in a hoodie sitting. And his whole body language said, "I already chose a side." He walked up, planted his hand on the top of my pod, and said, "All right, kid, show's over. Grab your stuff and let's go." "Officer," I said, keeping my voice as even as possible. "I paid for this seat. I haven't done anything wrong." "The airline wants you off," he replied. "That means you're off. No investigation, no questions, no, 'Hey, let me actually scan your boarding pass myself.' Just out." When I didn't move, he leaned closer. "If you keep refusing, it's interfering with a flight. That can be a felony. You want to go on vacation, or you want to go to holding." Ms. Wallace chimed in, sweet as poison. "She's probably using a stolen credit card, or running some scam. You should check her bag." "I'm not moving." I whispered more to myself than to him, but my fingers were digging into the armrests. "This is discrimination. You're profiling me because of how I look. What happened next is what you see in 100 viral videos in your feed." He grabbed my wrist, yanked my phone out of my hand, twisted my arm behind my back, and next thing I knew, my cheek was pressed against the galley wall and I heard the sharp click of handcuffs. Somewhere behind us, someone shouted, "She showed her ticket." Someone else said, "This is messed up." Phones went up higher. The second officer put his hand near his taser and yelled at the passengers to back off. "Stop resisting." The first one barked, even though my knees were shaking so hard I could barely stand. "I'm not resisting," I said, my voice cracking. "You're hurting me." Yeah, that happened. They marched me off that plane like I had tried to hijack it, right past the business travelers and the honeymoon couple and the nervous student, all of them silent, all of them watching this story. They thought they'd forget by next week. They walked me through the terminal with my hands cuffed behind my back, and it felt like the floor had turned into a stage. People stared, whispered, held phones up high. Now, no shame. I heard one little kid ask his mom, "What did she do?" And the mom said, "I don't know, honey," but the way she looked at me said she already decided. At one point, I caught the camera of some guy live streaming, and I just said it straight into the lens, "My name is Lena Carter. I'm being arrested for sitting in a seat I paid for." If I was going to be humiliated, I wanted at least one sentence of truth floating out there with it. At the airport police station, they finally sat me down, cuffed one wrist to the table, and started the paperwork like I was a problem they were bored of. The same officer picked through my bag and dumped everything out. My book, a pack of gum, my wallet, my keys. He grabbed my wallet and smirked at how simple it looked until he opened it. Out came my ID with my real address in one of those glass towers downtown people post on TikTok, and then my card. The heavy metal one you don't get in the mail, you get invited to. His chewing slowed. He picked up my car key and saw the logo from an Italian brand you definitely don't buy used on Craigslist. His face flickered just a little. "Stolen," he muttered, like if he said it out loud enough it might be true. "Run my name," I told him. "If you're going to ruin my day, at least do your job properly." That's when the door opened and the energy in the room changed. Not loud, not dramatic, just heavier. 4 men in suits walked in first, moving like they had rehearsed it. Then my father stepped in behind them. Marcus Carter is not the kind of person you expect to see in an airport police station. He's the guy you see in business magazines holding a hard hat at a construction site, even though he never picks up a hammer. 6'3", charcoal suit expression like a storm you can see on radar long before it hits. He walked straight to me, looked at the red marks on my wrist, and the muscle in his jaw started to twitch. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just turned to the officers and said, "Who touched her?" One of them tried to explain about protocol and non-compliance and security concerns. My dad cut him off with one sentence, "You put a child in handcuffs because she didn't look rich enough for a plane seat." He pulled out his phone, hit one button, and put it on speaker. A man's voice answered immediately, nervous. "Mr. Carter, we heard there was a situation at LAX." My dad didn't bother with pleasantries. "Is this your airport police or city police?" "Joint task force," the guy answered. "Great," my dad said. "I'm suing both, but that's for later. Right now, I want this officer's suspended badge and gun on the table, and I want a public apology from the airline that dragged my daughter off a seat I paid more for than his car." The room went dead quiet. You could hear the breath catch in the sergeant's throat. Within minutes, the officer was ordered to hand over his badge. He stared at me on his way out like I had just broken his whole world when all I did was exist in mine. Meanwhile, back on the plane, things weren't going how Miss Wallace imagined either. The jet had already pushed back, started taxiing engines, humming passengers thinking the drama was over. Then, the engine spooled down. The plane stopped on the taxiway. The captain's voice came over the speaker tight. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been asked to return to the gate due to an administrative issue." What he didn't say was that my dad's company, which leases half that airline's long-haul fleet, had just revoked permission to operate that specific aircraft until they dealt with a serious customer incident. Translation, you dragged the wrong kid off the plane. When my dad and I walked back to the gate, the scene looked like organized chaos. Passengers milling around gate agents on phones, ground crew staring at screens like they were doing bomb defusal. My father didn't wait in line. He walked behind the counter. The agent started to say, "Sir, you can't be back here," until he saw the name on the business card my dad put down. You know that look someone gets when they realize they might lose their job if they pick the wrong word? Yeah, that one. My dad said, "I want every passenger off that plane, I want the crew out here, and I want Ms. Wallace first." A few minutes later, there she was, heels clicking angrily already mid-rant. "I demand a refund. I demand compensation. This delay is unacceptable. The owner of this plane is an idiot." My father stepped forward, looked her dead in the eye, and said, "Hi, I'm the idiot." He introduced himself, calmly. Told her he owned the company that owned the aircraft she was just on and that he watched the video of her accusing me of theft because I didn't fit her mental picture of someone who belongs in first class. She tried to pivot into victim mode, claiming she felt unsafe, that I was aggressive, that she was protecting other passengers. My father didn't raise his voice. He just listed the consequences like bullet points. Your frequent flyer account with this airline is terminated. Your return ticket is canceled. You've been added to a permanent do not fly list for this carrier and its partners. She went pale, then red, then that strange gray-pink in between. "You can't do that," she stammered. "My husband does millions in shipping with your company." My dad nodded slowly. "Not anymore, he doesn't," he said. By the time you land a new carrier, he'll be explaining to his board why his contracts just vanished. Was that extreme? Maybe. Was it satisfying in the moment? I won't lie. Yeah. Hearing the gasps around us, seeing the flight attendant who had sided with Ms. Wallace unable to meet my eyes as she got told she was under review, watching the same passengers who had filmed my walk of shame now recording this. It was a lot. My dad then did something that honestly surprised me. He turned to everyone and apologized. Not for using his power, but for the fact that they had to be inconvenienced because a simple test of basic decency had been failed. He arranged a private jet for the first-class passengers, big vouchers, and hotel rooms for everyone else, and then he turned back to me like none of them were there and said, "Come on, kid, let's go home. Or to Barcelona. Your choice." On the drive away from the airport, my wrist still aching, my notifications blowing up with tags and reposts, he asked me, "You okay?" I told him the truth. Physically, mostly. Yeah, emotionally, not even close. It wasn't just about the seat or the cuffs. It was about how fast everyone believed the worst about me because I didn't match their picture of rich or innocent or worthy. My dad said something that stuck. The real problem isn't what happened when they realized who you are, it's what would have happened if you were someone nobody knew with no last name anyone cared about. That hit harder than anything else that day. So here's where I leave it with you. Was my dad right to go nuclear like that to destroy careers and contracts to make a point, or did he swing way too hard because he finally saw up close what I've been telling him about bias and profiling for years? If that cop had never seen my ID, if my dad wasn't rich, if nobody recorded that video, what do you think would have happened to a girl like me that day? And more importantly, how many people like me never get that second part of the story? The part where someone powerful shows up and says, "No, not today." You tell me, was that justice, or was it just another kind of power flex wearing a nicer suit? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been judged just by how you looked or watched someone get treated differently because people assumed they didn't belong? Do you think using money and power to punish discrimination fixes anything, or just starts a new kind of war? I really want to hear your stories on this one, so hit the comments, argue, agree, disagree, whatever you need to do. And if this story made you feel anything, anger, satisfaction, discomfort, share it with someone who needs to see it, and maybe next time you get on a plane and see a kid in a hoodie in first class, you'll think twice before deciding where they belong.